Yes, namaste and welcome everyone for today's webinar on Hindu temples and traditions. Our special guest is none other than Dr. Kanikeshwaran. He was just in India. He's going to get into his wonderful trip and relay it all to us. I'm Ankur Patel, Director of Outreach for Hindu University of America, zooming in from Los Angeles. Patrice from Maryland, thank you for joining. Hitul from DC, glad to have you on for today's webinar. With that, let me introduce our subject briefly. And we know Hindu temples and traditions occupy an important place in the Hindu mind, both in India and amongst the diaspora. The temple heritage of India constitutes a treasure trove of knowledge preserved and passed on through the ages. Modern day temples in large metros and in the diaspora reflect the collective memories of traditions spanning centuries, maybe bordering on millennia, right? There is more to temples than what can meet the eye, than what meets the eye. Temples are not mere congregational sites or prayer halls. They are a sacred space to commune with the source of oneness of existence. And they have been centers of culture, of civilization, of the community, of the village, of Hindu civilization for millennia. This webinar, we're going to get into an overview of Hindu temples and traditions with an emphasis on architecture, sculpture, worship, festival traditions, and more. And of course, we're going to hear from Kanixji on his recent trip. I'm sure you have some wonderful photos and a whole presentation to share. So with that, let me introduce our special guest, our regular guest now. I think Dr. Kanix has been on many webinars. He's taught many courses at HUA now. We're glad to count him as one of our regular faculty teaching several courses. Dr. Kanikeshwaran is actually an internationally known musician, composer, music educator, and scholar. He's got several recordings, large-scale musical productions, scores to his credit, and he's produced several very interesting and exciting informational pieces for Hindu University in collaboration with Hindu University of America on Ayodhya. I'll drop that one in the chat on the 75th anniversary of India. That was a beautiful piece. We have a couple of those that Kanixji has been able to put together to really display his talent. I'll share those in the chat. He is a pioneer in Indian American choral and orchestral music based on ragas. Through his work, he's built diverse coalitions between amateur and professional musicians, ensembles, academic institutions, dance companies, and more. I'm not going to take up too much time giving an introduction to Kanixji, but he is amazing, and we're going to get into all of this throughout today's webinar. We have some more people who have joined us. Dr. Chittur from New York, thank you for joining. Dilipji from Maryland, glad to have you on. Satyaji, thank you for joining us. Kanixji, with that, can I hand it to you to get us on our journey through Hindu temples and traditions?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Ankurji. It first of can you hear me well?
Yeah, audio is good.
Okay, very good. Um, so I want to start off as usual with a video, music video, which kind of sets the mood for the whole thing. Um, this video is part of the Rag Darshan project, which celebrates India in 75 different ragas. The segment is called the Sacred Geography of India, and that's central to the course itself, and that's central to our understanding of India. So we regard the land that we are born in as the Janma Bhumi, where we were born, the land that we reside and work in. We call it the Karma Bhumi, right? That's where we work. And then we also regard that the land we regard as sacred as a Punya Bhumi. So for all of us, Bharat is the Punya Bhumi, and it is not just for the face value of it. There is so much that contributes to the antiquity of it, and the fact that the sacredness or the perception of sacredness is enshrined in the DNA of the land itself. And so when we look back at older literature or even the pilgrimage circuits that exist today, we see that there is there are so many interconnected places. Like even today, the idea of making offerings to the Pitrus, there's a tradition that a lot of Orthodox people follow, which is they make a trip first to Rameshwaram and then um, take a bath in the sacred waters of the ocean in Rameshwaram, take some sand with them, and then make a trip all the way to Prayagraj in Uttar Pradesh. And from there, go to Kashi, and then from Kashi, go to Gaya, and then go back to Kashi and perform rituals there, and then bring the Ganga Jal, the waters of the Ganges, with them, take it all the way back to Rameswaram and do perform Abhishek there. And so it's only with this full circuit that the entire ritual is completed. So it's like this is a tradition that's been going on for a very long time. These days, it's packaged and sold. So you can actually complete the whole thing like in a week. But once upon a time, it was an arduous trek across the land. But the key thing is to notice that this spirit has been retained over time, and it's there. It is just there for all of us to perceive. So I always like to emphasize the sacred geography of India. So keep in mind the phrase sacred geography as we look at this video, and we'll come back and then get into what got me interested in the temples of India and what led me to my research and what I've done over the years and what I like to share using this course, and how I want to invite all of you that have not done this course to actually be part of this course so that I can um, share with delight all that I've learned over the ages, because it's so much for all of us. And then I will also talk about how I'm planning on doing the course a little different this time, where we invite every participant of the course to pick a temple of their choice and then start looking at it with the distinctions that we discuss right from the first day, and then have it conclude in a series of presentations and even essays, which can probably become part of a blog at a later point in time. That said, let me share my screen and present this video on the sacred geography of India. And if we end a little early, what I'll do is towards the end, I will play the video on Ayodhya towards the end of this class. So here it goes. Sorry, I'm getting back to the video.
No problem. Dr. Sherry Lindemood from Florida, thank you for joining us. Glad to have you. Geeta Ji from London, welcome, welcome.
Okay. Here it goes.
Vande Mataram, Vande Mataram. आसेतु हिमाचल पर्यन्त दिग्विजय कृच्छङ्कराचार्य विदिताखिलाण्ड परमेश्वरी परमे काश्मीरपुरश्री शारदा कलावती भारती पञ्चापकेशयुवती परमानन्द भैरवी परमानन्द भैरवी मेघालयामरुणां त्रिपुराम्बिकां नागाभरणां कामवर्धिनी
माळवगौळदेशव्यापिनीं महाभैरवसुपूजिताम्
भैरव पूजिता प्रभास गुर्जर पीठस्थितां श्रीकालिका शिवानुग्रहदां श्रीशिवां भवानीं भवनाशिनीं
त्रिलिङ्गकलिङ्गत्रिखण्डेशीं तारिणीम्
हिन्दोळद्युतिं जगद्वन्द्यां विन्ध्यवासिनी हिन्दोलद्युतिं जगद्वन्द्यां विन्ध्यवासिनी विद्यारण्यविनुता विजयनागरी कनकवर्षिणी विजयनागरी कर्नाटादि बहुदेश पालिनी शूलिनी मलयमारुतशीतलां मलयाचलनिकेतनाम्
बिन्दुमण्डलवासिनीं मालिनीं कन्याकुमारीम्
अयोध्या काशी काञ्ची मधुरोज्जयिनी मायापूर्यादिक्षेत्रे श्री मोक्षदायिनी वन्दे मातरम्
Yeah, so that's a video on the sacred geography of India. I'm unable to start. Okay, yeah. Yeah. So very quickly, does anybody have any thoughts on the video exploration of the temples of India?
Yeah,
Somebody
Satyajit, it
mentioned they
says
want to know the
beautiful
video.
Muthuswami Dikshita
Absolutely.
style. Go ahead, Kanishji.
Yes,
Sorry,
it
I was
is.
reading
Thank
people's
you.
comments.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, yeah. So, to elaborate on that comment, Muthuswami Dikshitar style, yes, it is inspired by Dikshitar. So, this 75 raga is describing India in this ragamala. And the name of each raga is kind of hinted at or explicitly mentioned in each of the lines. For example, the Dig Vijaya Krit Shankaracharya Vidita Khiland Parameshwari. So that's an raga called Shankara. So the word Shankaracharya contains the word Shankara. The name of the raga is Shankara. So it's captured in that. And it also captures the name Parameshwari, which is another raga, which is the second raga which follows in this. And then Kashmir Purashri Sharadam Kalavatim. The name of the raga is Kalavati. So what we see in this video is a tracing of the sacred geography of India, all the way from Kashmir to Kanyakumari. So the last but one, the second last one that we saw was Bindu Mandala Vasini, Malinim, Kanyakumarim. So we describe India as a one who resides in that point, Bindu Mandala, as also as Devi, who when you get into the uh, idea of Sri Chakra and the Srividya Tantra and so on, we describe Devi, or even if you just read the Lalita Sahasranama, you would understand the Devi as the one resident in the Bindu, which represents the confluence of Shiva and Shakti. So Bindu Mandala Vasini, in the metaphysical sense, and in the physical sense as the one that is enshrined in Kanyakumari. So from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, so this is a sacred space, and then the final raga really sums up the essence of the whole thing. Because what is the goal of living anyway? That if you look at the purusharthas of dharma, artha, kama, and what's the fourth one? That's the most important one, the moksha, which is the liberation from the cycle of samsara, or just this liberation from attachment. So what gives you moksha? Knowledge gives you moksha. And then the whole idea of pilgrimage is also with that quest of leading towards moksha. So there's moksha dhams, as you know, in India. And the moksha dhams are Ayodhya, Kashi, Kanchi, Mathura, Ujjaini, then Haridwar, which is known as Mayapura, then Puri. So these 7 sites are known as the 7 moksha dhams of the sacred space of India. So the last line that we heard, Ayodhya, Kashi, Kanchi, Mathuro, Jayani, Maya, Puryadi Kshetreshi, Mokshadaini, Vande Mataram. So Puryadi Kshetreshim. So the name of the raga here is Purya, which is also captured in this line. So the goal of sharing this video was to first get used to the idea of the sacred space of India that we're going to be addressing constantly in this course, and then and looking at pilgrimage clusters and the stories and the legends that link them together. So, but before we get into that, I want to get into why I got interested in why I'm even offering this course and why I got interested in the study of temples of India, and what is the connection between temples and music, and all that kind of background, which is uh, central to the material that I'll be presenting throughout the class. Okay, first, as a child, I lived in an area in Chennai which was home to a number of temples built during the British period. So when we talk of ancient, so they were not really ancient, but they were in a sense. Like, for instance, there was a temple 2 doors away from where I lived, which was actually visited by Chhatrapati Shivaji during his exploits in southern India. So he made a fleeting trip to Madras, which is pretty much uh, defined by Fort St. George at that point in time. He visited this Kali temple in that part of Madras, which now has been relocated, and it's just 2 doors away from what used to be my grandmother's house. And that was part of my childhood. And I used to go there all the time. And what fascinated me about that, the reason I got to go there was, I mean, the elders in the family, my aunts, used to go there to other neighboring temples in the area, all within walking distance. And then temple, you used to hear the sound of the temple bells throughout the day. Not throughout the day, during specified times during the day. And then it was almost like a call to come visit. And then there used to be colorful processions, parades, utsavams, as they're called, which used to happen around the year. So that was the natural element, natural attraction to the temple. And then once I came to the US, and when I looked at the monuments that are protected and preserved here, uh, what I realized, especially during a visit to the Alamo, was that the amount of resources spent in projecting this, protecting it rightfully as a monument and making the history and the knowledge available to people is something significant here. Whereas the 300-year-old temple that is 2 doors away from my house was not known for its history. It was known for the religious aspect of it, but people did not know that they were actually visiting a space that had been visited by a historic, celebrated personality 300 years ago. And leave that alone. Once you go to, there are three central spaces in Chennai. One is the Kapalishwara Temple, which has a history that goes back about 1500 years. Then, if you go to the southern edge of Chennai, there's a place called Thiruvanmiyur, which also has a history that goes back 1500 years. Travel north on the coast, you hit a place called Tiruvattriyur, which is also a place that has a history of about 1500 years. And that place has been in worship for 1500 years. Poems have been written about it. So why do we not know about all this? So this is what motivated me to start a website called templenet.com, which is a collection of essays on more than 1,000 temples from around India. We'll share the link for you. And that's how my research into temples started. And it was a long process at that point in time because you didn't have the internet the way it is now, the way we take for granted back in the 1990s. So I had to go around visiting cities, collecting books, reading through them, piecing together evidence, getting books and small books in different regional languages from on interlibrary loan from various libraries in the US, and then compiling the information, writing them manually. There was no chat GPT to uh, kind of integrate lines together or reword them or anything. Everything had to be done manually, but it was a thoroughly enjoyable process. And that is how I got into the uh, history of temples, particularly from the standpoint of stories and legends that tie them together. We're going to be looking at all that. So I'm going to launch my presentation. It's a keynote presentation. Ask some questions and let's make it as interactive as possible. And then uh, we'll pause for a second to introduce a course and then invite you to register for it. So while I launch the keynote presentation, does anybody have any questions? Please feel free to type them in here.
No, just people were commenting how great the video was. Anupji, very good raga collection. Yes, thank you for sharing. I don't see any questions. Now's your chance in the Q&A box or the chat. Bhushanji's beautiful song with great description, class description, very moving. And what was the name of the video? Is it public yet? Because I was searching for it. I didn't see it.
It is Rag Darshan that we published in 2022.
Oh, that rag. That was okay. Yeah. Rag
Yeah,
Darshan.
that's one. We just
Okay,
played
so
a segment.
I'll put that in the chat along with the
Yeah.
Ayodhya
Yeah.
one as well. Ayodhya Cultural Renaissance. There you go. So if you want to pick that up on your own afterwards, please enjoy.
Yeah. So we can see my screen now. So let's go through some of these. Anybody know what temple this is? Quickly, if you can just type it into the chat window. Are people typing? Not able to see the chat window. Yeah, Tirupati. That's correct. That's correct. Very good. What's okay? What is this one? Anyone? This is Chidambaram. It's not Madurai. Yeah, it's Chidambaram. Yeah, but close enough. What is this one? So there's a river and there's these shikharas on the coast, and there's boats and there's pilgrims and everything. So what is this? I need at least one answer. No, it's not Kashi. It's not Ayodhya. It's definitely not. It's not Nashik.
Can you go to full screen, or you have the little window that's popped up right there? If you can just close the little gray one.
Okay,
It's
I was
'cause
looking at
the
the chat. Oh,
yeah,
I
there
was
you
looking at
go.
the chat window. Sorry. Yeah, it's okay. Well, you can monitor the chat for me, Ankur. Yeah,
Okay.
this is not. Yeah, this is not Kashi, but Nashik is close enough. It's Pandharpur in Maharashtra. Okay. So the next one, what is this? I'm going to request Ankur to read out if there's any responses. What temple is this?
Mayapur?
Um, no, this is in
Okay.
Bengal. This is Dakshineshwar.
Kali Temple?
Yeah,
Dakshineshwar.
the Kali Temple, Dakshineshwar, close to the Ramakrishna Mutt. So this is where Sri Ramakrishna spent a good part of his life. What is this? This everybody should know this.
Yeah. Kernath.
This is Kedarnath. Yes, this is up in the Himalayas, and this constitutes one of the 12 Jyotirlingas, um, 12 temples which were glorified by Adi Shankara in his Stotra of the 12 Jyotirlingas. These constitute a sacred circuit connecting the north and the south, and the east and the west. Well, the north and the south base predominantly. What temple is this? Folks from southern India, you should be able to guess it right away. Anyone? It's in the heart of Chennai. It's the Kapalishwara Temple with a history that goes back again about 1500 years. It's the one of the best visited temples. Uh, it has an annual festival which draws lakhs of people to come and see it in the heart of Chennai itself. What about this one?
Yeah, a couple guesses. Badrinath. Oh, from the previous one.
Yeah, yeah. On the previous one, this is Kapalishwara in Chennai. What
Mm.
about this one? This is Khajuraho, the Kandariya Mahadev temple in Khajuraho in Madhya Pradesh. Again, this is a beautiful temple. What about this one? This is in Gujarat for anyone from Gujarat. This is a place called Modhera. It's the famous Sun Temple in Modhera. This is again at least 1,000 years. This is about 1,000 years old, and it's one of the few sun temples in India. It's again is a site of a cultural festival, a dance festival that happens each year, and it's protected by the Archaeological Survey of India. What about this? This is another temple that's protected by the ASI, the Archaeological Survey of India. This is called Belur. It's in Karnataka. It was built by a group of rulers, the dynasty called the Hoysala dynasty. And the temple is made with what's called soapstone, which is very easy to chisel. And the sculpture in this temple is very, very, very intricate. The whole temple is very ornate. And you find amazing sculpture here that's generally not written about in the international media or even in the national media for that matter. This is a temple that you wouldn't know. This was part of my childhood. This is right. This is not the Shivaji visited temple, but this is another one. We lived in a street that surrounded this temple. It's called the Agraharam, and we used to be able to. I mean, at least on 100 days per year, the deity used to be taken out in procession around the temple and would pass our home. So temple life was part of the atmosphere in which I was raised. And this is a temple tank where there used to be a float festival once a year. And once a year, fireworks used to be let off on this temple tank. So all that, and so this is the plaque in the Kalikambal temple, which is right next 2 doors away from my grandmother's house, where this stone was laid in 1977, 300 years after the visit of Shivaji there. I still remember that ceremony in 1977. And these are processions that happen in Chennai, the one in the Mylapore temple where the deity is taken out, and the number of people that gather is just unbelievable. Um, okay, here is a close-up of one of the temples from Khajuraho, and what we're seeing here is what's called the Shikhara, or the tower of the temple. Here's an example of another tower. This is from southern India. This is called the Vimana. And this is the deity that's enshrined in the innermost sanctum. And there are any clue what this deity is referred to as? called Sarabheshwara. It's linked to the Narasimha Avatara and later. This is a sculpture of Sarabheshwara. And what's the name of this deity? This is Narasimha, whose ruins are found in Hampi, which is one of the models of temple culture. Here's a temple from Hampi. It's called the Virupaksha Temple, which is not in ruins, which is actually in worship. And it's one of the greatest places to visit. Hampi is. And here are some elements of temple architecture, no, temple life itself. So this is what's called the Bali Peetham. And this is a flagstaff called the Dwaja Stambham, where the flag is raised once a year during the time of festivities. Like here's a flagstaff that you see in temples. This is a tall staff of wood with metal casing around it. And the flag is hoisted once a year in recognition of the temple ceremonies that happen. And this is a form of Shiva called Dakshinamurti. And any idea what this form of Shiva is known as? It's called Soma Skanda. It's a bronze image, and we'll get into a little bit of how this image is cast as we get into this. So the reason I went through all this is just to give a flavor of the sacred geography of India, the temple circuits that are there in India, and just to highlight the familiarity that we have with some of the temples, and also start exposing you to the vocabulary behind the temples with words like the Sthala Vriksham, the Dwaja Stambham, and so on and so forth. And now we will get into what we will be actually covering in this class in detail and the approach that we're going to be taking. But prior to that, I'm just going to request Ankur to give an intro about this course and what people have said about it in the past and what his own experience was in taking this class.
Yeah, no, it was great. And I think you did a good job of outlining it and just how you've gone through it, explaining different aspects of mandirs, the history, and that project that we did, on our own mandir, like we identified whichever one that we were going to focus on, and having the whole class do presentations, applying what they learned throughout the quarter. It was really, really good, really fun, interesting class. And like all courses at HUA, the cohort that you're with really shapes it. And so, like engaging with the students, their own stories, what mandirs are relevant to them for what reasons, and you shared a little bit like that. And it's just it's a really wonderful class that gets into the Hindu temples and traditions, builds understanding, and so many different projects that you've potentially laid out with it, right? You have your TempleNet, the different videos, the blogs that can come out of it, the way that we still have a temple tour to do as well. It was basically part of the class is a virtual temple tour where we get to learn about all sorts of mandirs, but then it dovetails into an in-person temple tour that we're gonna be doing. Yeah, Mahalakshmi Ji, there's a whole, I think 2 or 3 courses where you get into the temple architecture itself, right? Where you describe each component of a mandir and the different styles, right? In the different areas and the regions, and what distinguishes one location or one site or one architectural style or dynasty, and the way that they built mandirs to the next. Yeah, there's so much in the course, not enough time to cover everything. Sometimes it feels like it could be 2 courses, but it was a great experience. I'm going to put a link to the course in the chat with some of the details as well. If there are any other students who have taken it, you can raise your hand and we can get your take on it as well. And it wasn't so hard. You'd had quizzes, but those quizzes really helped drive home the information, review the information, learn it, apply it. But it wasn't hard. It wasn't too much, but it was structured in a good way where we actually, you led us through the learning, the process, the mandirs, and so many different things. Now, it was like 2 or 3 quarters ago, and there was so much that I have forgotten. When you're flashing through the mandirs, I'm like, oh, I know that one. Which one is that? But it was really fun, and I enjoyed the class. I hope other people will as well.
Yeah, let me just show you a book. This is a book that is gifted to me last. Can you see it? It's oh, you can kind of see it. It's the archaeological. These are the sites that are protected by the Archaeological Survey of India, and it includes. Oh my God. Sorry, it's not catching it very well, but it's a fantastic book which lists all the historic sites in India that are maintained by the Archaeological Survey of India, ASI as it's called, and these are in particular. No, these are not all the ASI sites. These are just the ones that are regarded as UNESCO World Heritage Sites of India. Okay, so the grand temple built by the Cholas in Tanjore is considered to be a UNESCO site, and so is Hampi. If you go to Hampi, Hampi represents the ruins of the Vijayanagar kingdom, and there's a whole set of monuments there. Some are in ruins, and some of them are in full form. Um, and that entire region is regarded as a UNESCO heritage site. And there's a lot more in India which would need to be protected like that. And when I got this book last year, uh, one thing I noticed was I got a supplement to it. So where they had added a new one more to this, and then that was the Ramappa Temple near Warangal in Telangana. So that prompted me actually to make a trip to Warangal this year, and I'm going to share a few pictures on that. And basically, what I want to share in this presentation is um, my interest in this topic and my and what led me to a deeper study of temples and how they are linked to the music of India and how they're linked to the various stories of the Sthala Purāṇas and how to distinguish between the different architectural forms and how fascinating it is that although the architectural forms are different, the worship forms are different, the regions are different, the prasad, the offering that is made to the deity is different, but there's a common core that ties all of these together. The Puranas tie them together in a big way. Like, for instance, let's look at some of those and then it'll become a little more clear. So, let me first share with you.
And just before you jump into that, the title of the book again?
Let me type it in.
Yeah. And then Lakshmiji was asking, does your course also include the Agama Shastra? And of course, there's so many different aspects of it that you bring into it. I think you even quote, but it's not a focus on that Shastra in particular.
Correct. Yeah, we do talk about the Agama Shastras, and because when you say Agama Shastra, there's not just one Agama Shastra. Like when you talk of the Vedas, you're looking at the different Vedas. We don't need to get into what the different Vedas are, but then there's many different branches that the Vedas have, the different shakas, right? Similarly, when it comes to agamas, there are the Shaiva agamas, there are the Vaishnava agamas, there are the Shakta agamas, and so on and so forth. So we'll talk about some of the agamic references and how they dictate what kind of ceremonies and rituals are performed and how the agamas are get into an inordinate amount of detail. So like for instance, you get into how a temple is to be built, what are the dimensions of a deity, what are the proportions when you actually carve an image of a deity, uh, what are the ceremonies to be followed in the annual festival, and what is the gap between two. I mean, so many things are specified in the agamas, and that is what contributes to the long standing traditions in a temple. The ability of a temple to have the akarshan, the ability to attract devotees over a period of time, and maintain the traditions. And there's so many things in there. And will there be types of architecture, of temple architecture in India? If you just go back to the visuals that we looked at, let me go back to that again and share the screen and show you how fascinating it is. Okay. This is a Tirupati temple, right? What you see in this temple, the golden tower is called the Vimanam. And the all these are called the gopurams. The other pyramidal structures here are called the gopurams. And the one right, the furthest away from us, is at the entrance to the temple, and it's called the Raja Gopuram. Now, these gopurams are a hallmark of what are called the Vijayanagar temple building style. What's called the Vijayanagar temple building style. As we all know, the Vijayanagar empire was in prominence, and it pretty much was a guardian of Hindu culture. And it has done literally monumental work in erecting monuments and in preserving monuments and enhancing the temples that were there all over southern India. So the gopurams here are of the Vijayanagar style, and the Vimanam, which you see, which is above the Garbhagriha, or the central shrine of a temple, it is the it is a style from the Chola period of the older era. Okay, this is the Chidambaram temple. You see a couple of Vimanams here above some shrines, but this is the Gopuram, which really stands out. And I was recently telling a friend of mine that when I went to Chidambaram back in the 1970s by bus, you could see the Gopurams from a distance. And that kind of kept growing. And I mean, when you look at it, it seems small at first. When you actually get closer to it, it gets larger and larger. And then it becomes very imposing when you get very close to it. But of late, you really don't see the Gopurams from a distance, because there are so many high-rise buildings that are surrounding the temple. The only way to see the Gopuram literally is when you get inside the temple. So anyway, so this is in Maharashtra. As you can see here, the style of architecture is different. The shikaras look different. And if you go to Bengal, this is called the Navrang style of shikaras. As you can see, 9 different bodies, 9 different, um, literally 9 different projections on the central shrine of the temple. So these are called the Navrang in the center. And this is the Kedarnath temple. The architectural style of this temple is different. This is called the Nagara style of architecture, where the shikara looks very different from the typical southern Indian architecture that you see in this slide. So here is Khajuraho. You see the shikara as the tallest structure in the temple, which is right above the sanctum of the temple, or the Garbhagriha. You have the Mukha Mandapa or the Maha Mandapa in front. And then you have other structures, the Antarala, and so on and so forth. And we'll be studying these in a fair amount of detail as we contrast the different architectural styles, especially this one. This is the Deccan style of architecture, where the plan, if you look at it from a top, if you get a drone shot of the temple, it looked like the foundation of the temple, which is raised here, where people can walk around. This area is called the Jagati, and it's a star-shaped structure. Okay, and there could be a Trikuta style of architecture where there are 3 shrines, or there could be more. And the shikara in this temple is missing, but this is typically the style of temple seen in the Deccan. So just by virtue of looking at these slides and not even going there, we are able to perceive of 3 or 4 different architectural styles, right? So, and we'll be getting into the details of this. And while we are on that topic, what I wanted to share with you was a recent trip that I made. After looking at this book, I wanted to go to Warangal. So this time when I went to India, I made a trip to Hyderabad, and from there drove to Warangal thanks to a friend of mine. And this is what's called the Hanuma Konda 1,000-pillared temple. And you can see the ornate Nandi here, which is again an ancient one. This is well preserved. And this is a good sized Nandi. It doesn't really face the Shiva temple, but this is what the temple looks like. Look at the nature of the pillars here. Okay, this is the Kakatiya style of temple building. And the Kakatiyas were rulers that ruled over that region of what is now Telangana, which used to be Andhra Pradesh. And their capital was the city of Warangal. And if you look at these pillars, you see these cube-shaped structures in the center, but you also see these circles. And if you look at this pillar that I'm pointing to, the circle is even, the pillar is even darker in color, the finish is even more. If you look at the circle here and wonder how it was created, almost looks like it's been turned by a lathe. It's incredible as to how these were created, right? Um, so just see, try to imagine how these, you can imagine lathe turned. If you have a lathe and if you have a piece of metal, you can put it in there and it circles and you can actually turn it to a circular shape that you want. But this is stone. How could they have done it, and how could they have placed it here with all these um, stone beams carved out and placed on top of them? And there was no cement. There used to be interlocking structures. And so and again, this is a Deccan, this is from Deccan, right? So it's a star-shaped plan with the 3 shrines in it with all these intricate carvings on all sides and so on and so forth. It's maintained by the ASI, but there's a lot of crowds visiting the temple, and the maintenance could be better um, because it's such a monument that needs to be showcased in an even better way. That's what I feel. Um, and so this is some insight that I got out of visiting this time. And it also, look at all these jalis here and the intricacy of what's being carved. Um, and again, now this is the picture inside the 1,000-pillared hall. The pillars don't quite number 1,000. There's about 300 of them, but they are in all shapes and sizes. The pillars are, yeah, we get, now this is from a different angle. And so there are pillars resting on places where you can sit. There are pillars from the ground up, and altogether they number about 300. And but for some reason, it's called the 1,000-pillared hall. And I think we'll get to another picture of the Nandi as well. So this is the temple, the Hanamakonda temple, enshrining Shiva in the form of Rudreshwara. Where I'm pointing my mouse to, that's where the Shiva Sannidhi is, and straight ahead are the Vishnu and Aditya, who are no longer there. And this is the crowds of people waiting to get in, and this is the Nandi again. So, so another aspect of temples that we will cover in great detail is the Sthala Purana. Because when you take a temple, it's not by itself. The temple has its story, and these stories are tied to a national or a pan-Indian narrative. And that narrative is contained in the Purāṇas, actually. The Purāṇas are a group or a set of literature that came into being several hundred years ago. We commonly refer to them as a set of 18 Purāṇas. Some of them being the Linga Purana, the Shiva Purana, the Vishnu Purana. Then the Skanda Purana is the largest, and it has a big section called the Nagara Khanda, which contains stories related to various places all over India. And many temples have stories that are related to them that actually tie back to the Puranas. And there are local narratives with respect to saints visiting them, stories that are tied to the Bhakti movement, whether it's a Bhakti movement, the first millennium in the southern region of India, or the Bhakti movement of the second millennium in Maharashtra. And all these are tied to stories related to temple. So we'll be covering all those as well as other aspects such as the Sthala Vrikshas, the Tirthas, the personalities that have visited them, and so on and so forth. And when you tie all those together, these are the different areas that we will cover in the course. One is the significance of temples and temple culture, the empirical classification of temples, the architectural styles. We will develop a vocabulary for us to understand the whole thing better. The essentials of a temple, devatas. Okay, when you look at the agamic devatas, the different forms of Shiva that are actually carved in stone or cast in metal and have survived the ravages of time. These bronze castings came into being more than 1,000 years ago. If you live in the Bay Area, you can go to the Museum of Asian History in San Francisco and take a look at Soma Skanda, who's enshrined, who is in there. It's a metal image of Somaskanda, that is Shiva, Uma, and Skanda. And or Nataraja, which we take for granted everywhere, or Ardhanarishwara that we take for granted, or the image of the dancing Krishna on the snake. So, and then the Purāṇas. What is involved in temple sculpture? What are the agamic worship traditions? What is a Nitya Puja? Who are the community of priests who take care of the pujas? Then what are the celebrations that happen in temples, the utsavas? Personalities connected to temple history, both from the standpoint of visiting temples or contributing to literature, or actually creating endowments for building temples. Then Bhakti movement. What is a Bhakti movement? When did it come into being, and what is its role in temple culture? History. Who are the rulers that have built temples? Which are the temples that got destroyed over a period of time due to conquests and so on and so forth? And how do they get rebuilt? And what is the resilience behind them? And of course, if I could talk about the music behind the temples all day long, but that's only an element of what we're going to be covering in this class. As you can see, the amount of material is huge. What we'll try to do this time is to create the vocabulary up front and the essentials and the architectural styles and sculpture up front. And then let each of the participants pick a temple that they can relate to. And then we'll work with the course syllabus to slowly enable you to write an essay that integrates a lot of these concepts together and enable you to give a cohesive narrative of a temple that you're able to relate to. Whether it's a modern temple or whether it's an ancient temple, it doesn't matter. There's a lot you can say about it from a fully informed and a literate perspective, and that is what we are trying to work through this course. And like I said, the reason for my teaching this course is that I am overwhelmed and by the extent of knowledge that prevails in India, which has survived the test of time over the last couple of thousand years and has withstood a lot of challenges and has always been inspiring people, and is something that still continues to inspire people to go on pilgrimages and visit them. So what is it about this? And what can I do to share this knowledge? And that is the motivation behind my teaching this class. And I'm hoping that I've conveyed this sense of wonderment in this seminar, in this webinar. And I'm open to questions now, and I welcome you all to sign up for this class, and then we can explore this joy together. So let me stop for a minute now.
Great. I dropped a link to the course in the chat. It's going to be on Tuesdays at 8 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time. It's going to start January 14th. Let me also just launch the quick poll. Let us know if you're interested in enrolling. We have 2 retreats coming up. You can let us know if you're interested in taking those courses, enrolling. Yeah, I don't see questions in the Q&A box yet. Please share your questions or thoughts. Dr. Janki from the Department of History in Tamil Nadu, thank you for joining us. If you haven't yet, please put in the chat where you're zooming in from. If you're a previous student of Dr. Kanikeshwaran, maybe you can raise your hand and we can have a quick testimonial. But this is such an important fundamental course, right? We know mandirs are at the center of Hindu culture, civilization, and approaching them with knowledge, being informed, it's very nice. All right, TR Reddy, let's hear what your question is, what you have to say.
Yes, good afternoon, and really enjoyed Dr. Kanikeshwaran's lecture.
Thank you.
Have you heard of Maui Island Shiva Temple in Hawaii?
Yeah, Kauai with the temple inspired by Sivaya Subramania Swami.
At the Shankar Monastery, they have been building for 33 years, and it's 100% granite.
Correct. I've not been there, but I've heard a lot about it.
Yeah, I've been there, but when we were there, it was not ready. They just opened now. My second question is, when was the largest stone temple in India was built?
See, they've always See, they've always been continuously improved over a period of time. Like if you go back to the Pallava period, they were all stone temples.
Yes. When was
And
the last improvement?
the Pallava period goes back to the first millennium, like around 600, 700 CE. And that was the time when the Mahabalipuram temples came into existence. And then if you go to places in Karnataka like Pattadakkal and other places, they were also almost concurrent during that time. Then it is only in the later years that the Cholas worked on that and expanded the structures. And then things have evolved over the last 1,300, 1,400 years.
But the last I heard was of course, Ranganatha Swami Temple is the largest temple, right?
No, the largest temple is this. No.
No, which is the Srirangam?
Srirangam is correct. That's the largest temple.
And I understand last time they made any modifications 250 years ago.
No, they built the Rajagopuram to the Srirangam temple about 30 years back.
30 years back?
Yeah,
okay.
Almost 40 years back. 40 years back is when they built the Rajagopuram to the temple.
So earlier I sent some pictures to Ankur Patel. I don't know if he has. We are building a all-stone temple in a small village, well, medium-sized village in Telangana for the last 5 years. It's 100% stone.
Okay.
Similar to the one in Mayu Island. It's a Channakeshwara Temple. I sent some pictures. In fact, I showed to Modi when he was in New York, and he was impressed. And I even challenged him, this is the largest stone temple. And I invited him to inaugurate. I don't think he'll come. It's a small village. But I'm sure the Chief Minister will be inaugurating it. Telangana Chief Minister will be inaugurating it.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah, I know there are thousands of one-room, two-room temples are built, but this is about 4,800 square foot. So we're proud of it.
That's a good size. So please join us in the class. That way you can explore the wide range of temples that are seen all over the country.
Well, they don't go to the trouble of building stone temples nowadays in India, so including Ram Mandir. So to say. Thank you. Maybe when it's complete, I'll post it to Hindu University, and then he can share with you. Or if you share your email, we'll send it to you. Are you in America or where are you? Are you in US or India?
I'm based in Ohio, Cincinnati.
Ohio? Columbus?
Cincinnati, Ohio.
Cincinnati, this soap city. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Tiaredi. All right. Satyamurthy ji? If you unmute, you can make a quick comment. You had your hand raised, maybe for something else. There's a question by an anonymous attendee in the Purāṇas section. What Purāṇas do you cover, and how much deep description that we can learn, and what Purāṇa books should they get if they're interested in that?
Yeah, to start with, this is not a course on Purāṇas. This is a course on the temples of India. And we talk about Sthala Purāṇas that are directly connected to temples and how they relate to Purāṇas of lore. So we don't look at any textbooks on Purāṇas in this class. But we do go back and refer to legends in various Purāṇas, particularly the Skanda Purāṇa.
Great. What is the oldest Sanatani temple in the world? HK is asking.
Does anybody have an answer to this?
You can put in the chat. What is your guess for the oldest temple mandir in the world? I keep on looking at Harappa, Mohenjo-daro. Like some of the spaces there are nascent in that way, but not exactly what you're looking at.
No, and again, what do you define as a Sanatani temple?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I'm going to send that question back to Mr. HK. What is your definition of a Sanatani temple? So, and then I'll give an answer. See, the thing is, we can go by tradition, or we can go by what has been recorded in literature. Okay? So the Vedic culture is not temple-centric. The Agamas are very temple-centric. And when you talk about the Purāṇas, we pretty much don't deal with the chronology there. But we talk about the timelessness of existence itself, and literally the timelessness of these temples and the connection to the Mahabharata and Ramayana and so on and so forth, right? If you just go strictly by the connections to the epics, like for example, if you go by the story of Vibhishana and his Sharanagati, and um, how the story of how Rama gave an image of Mahavishnu to Vibhishana to because he wanted to take it with him to Lanka. So Vibhishana sets forth southward with the image of Vishnu given to him by Rama, because that image had been with him in worship for the entire by the entire Surya Vamsh. Okay. So Vibhishana treasures it and brings it down, and Ganesha plays a trick on him and causes him to place it on the ground on the banks of the in a little island on the banks of the Kaveri. Okay. And that image actually grows root and settles into the ground, so he's not able to lift it and take it back with him to Lanka. And this place is Sri Rangam, the place that Mr. Reddy had just mentioned a few minutes back as the largest temple in India. Correct. So could we call this the oldest temple in India, just based on the stories associated with it? Possibly yes, but we really cannot pinpoint and say that chronologically this is the oldest. And one thing about Indian culture itself is that we are not history keepers in that regard. We have documented knowledge. We have documented the Purāṇas, we have documented the Shastras, but we've not documented things about, okay, this came into being in this year. This person was born in this year. They did this in this year. They died in this year. So we're not being good in record keeping from that standpoint, because that was not part of our culture. So I would say that you can kind of say that this is one of the oldest temple in India from this standpoint, from the standpoint of the Puranas. And when you say the oldest serving Hindu temple, again, it's hard to say that. I can look at the Sangam literature in Tamil and say that the Kartikai Deepam celebration in Arunachaleswara Temple has been around for more than 2000 years. So does that mean that that's the oldest temple? I don't know. But if you look at the Puranas in Kashi, they would declare that the Kashi temple traditions have been probably older. We don't know when they started or how exactly. We cannot pinpoint when they started. Okay. But in terms of the festival traditions that have been surviving, if you can just place things as having started in the first millennium and have been around for at least 1500 years. I mean, I can point to many temples in southern India that are at least 1500 years old, based on literary evidence, based on the poetry that was written about 1500 years ago, and the traditions that have survived from then until now. Even if you go to the Brihadishwara Temple in Tanjore, that was built 1000 years ago, and musicians were actually set up to sing compositions in various temples in southern India by Rajaraja Chola. Right? Now let's take the Jyotirlingas. They have been around in time from the time of Adi Shankara. And there are questions as to the period in which he lived in. There are two schools of thought. One says that he lived 1200 years ago. The other one says that he lived about 2400 years ago. If we went with the 2400-year theory, then the Jyotirlingas were in existence during that time because he has sung about them, right? Or Tiruchendur in southern India was in existence during that time because he sung about them. So all we can say is that the temple culture of India, as we know it today, it's been around for at least two millennia, and in some cases in three. Actually, we are into the fourth millennium right now, if you look at it that way. So I think the antiquity of the tradition is huge, and it's monumental. It is overwhelming, and it just leaves us with a sense of wonderment, respect, reverence, and it also leaves us with a feeling that we can only scratch the tip of the iceberg and not know all of it. So that's my answer to that question.
No. That's a whole, so many different tangents that are opened
Yeah.
up there. Okay, let's see. What other questions and comments? Surviving, he meant surviving, not serving, makes sense. Um, Man, there's so much history there, and the mandirs being destroyed and rebuilt, and so many different stories. It's always interesting, exciting to hear um, each individual, story. Mandir has its own and interesting story. Okay, so I have the poll up. Please let us know if you're interested in taking the course. Um, Satyamurthy ji, you raised your hand again, maybe by accident. Type in the chat, please. Okay, I think that's kind of closing in. We don't have any more questions. I'll play the maybe the Rag Darshan, the 75 tribute to Bharat that is timeless on our way out. And before that,
Or we
can
could play
oh,
Ayodhya actually.
play the
Might,
Ayodhya one. Okay. Yeah, so I'll play that
yeah.
on the way out. But before that,
Yeah.
Kanixji, do you want to give I mean, I made my pitch a couple times. I can't emphasize how much fun, interesting, engaging. And if you haven't taken a course at HOA, this is a great one to get started with. And with that, let me hand it to Kanixji for some closing thoughts, and then we'll play out with the Ayodhya video.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you look at the temples in Ayodhya, so the Puranic age of them will go back in time. The actual physical structures may be newer. And that is a story with many places in India. So the connotations of those, there's a contrast between the tirthas, which have been sacred sites forever, like the Prayags and so on and so forth, the Badrinaths, or the Himalayan pilgrimage signs and shrines and so on, or the monuments that were built by rulers like the Tanjore Temple, or even the Kakatiya temples in Warangal, or some of the modern ones that were being built, like the one that Mr. Reddy had mentioned. So I hope I've conveyed my sense of wonderment at the whole thing, and I hope there's more people interested in learning more about these. And believe me, it'll be an enjoyable experience as we walk through this course, temple after temple, region after region, and developing a vocabulary and the ability to tell a story ourselves and um, understand the next time. Some of the feedback that I've gotten from people is that it has changed their perspective on what they look at when they visit a temple in India. And that to me is very inspiring. And if I should say that it has changed my perspective too over the years. Like, for instance, when I went to the Warangal temple this time, it is different from how it was when I went to Ayodhya last time. And that was different from how it was when I had gone to some places in Karnataka the year before that. So we grow with each element of detail that we take into ourselves, and there's no end to it. So my request to all of you is to please consider this topic, and please do visit my website, templenet.com, and please do feel free to get in touch with me, kanix@gmail.com, and I just invite you to explore all this together. So thank you very much, and please do watch this video on Ayodhya, which we made last year, no, actually this year, in time for the inauguration of the new mandir, the new temple in Ayodhya. There's a lot contained in the video. Please pay attention to the text, the lyrics, and the meaning. So I look forward to seeing all of you again. So thank you very much. Namaste.
Thank you. Dhanyavad.
श्रीरामचन्द्रं सदा राधयेऽहम्। जय श्री सदा
Wonderful. Yes, an introductory course. Kanixji, you already responded. That was a beautiful video. Thank you so much for putting that together. Every time I watch it, it's inspiring.
Thank you. Thank you. Hope to make more. Thank you, everyone, and hope to see you soon. Thank you. Namaste again.